This second session will be conducted by the CA Pulak Saha.
Very good afternoon, my fellow professional colleagues. Already Mr. Shweta Poddar, he has taken you through the GSTs and critical aspects of the GST, and the organizers have given me an opportunity to deal with the new registration process and the payment process. First of all, you know that it is already in the market and people are now struggling to know the industry and the professionals that whether GST is really going to come from 1st of April 2016 or not. Because wherever we go, we get this question from the professionals as well as the industry. Because for the industry it is a challenge and the professionals it is an opportunity. So everybody is now trying to gear up with these opportunities and challenges. Still we are struggling to get it passed by the Rajya Sabha, and we all are expecting that in this monsoon session, which has been already started from yesterday, we are expecting it to be through. Now if it is being through, now the question comes whether the deadline of 1st of April, the time is small or adequate. That is a question. In the meantime, what has happened, the MPART committee of the finance ministers, state finance minister, they have formed one joint committee, and the joint committee, including all the finance ministers of the various states, they have discussed in several meetings, and they have started issuing certain business process notes. So one such basically they came out on 6th of October, three process notes. Three process notes they have. One is for the payment, registration and refund, and thereafter finally they have come out with that return process note. Now I'll be dealing with the registration and payment part, and my co-speaker, fellow co-speaker Arun Agarwal would be dealing with the payment, dealing with return and refund. You know that registration, any finance act, the registration is a compulsory process and the first process to start with the compliances. The basic objective of this GST, it would be basically a automated system. Everything should be done through automation. There would not be any manual intervention, and that manual, everywhere in the process note they have stated everything and anything and everything to be done through systems and through website, and through for that purpose goods and service tax network has been created. That network would be handled by the robust IT system, and that IT system has been given, the contract has been awarded to the Infosys to build up that system, and from that system it would be basically operated. And the objective of this automated system is that there should not be any interface between the SSC and the department. Everything what you need to do, that you need to go to the portal and you have to fill up a form. The form has been, a draft form has been prescribed. You have to fill up the form and you have to upload it, and thereafter certain required information to be furnished, and after obtaining the required information that would be given. Now there is another clause, another proposal which has been given, that there has to be some timeline within which that registration to be granted, and if that within the timeline, if the registration is not granted, it is deemed to have been granted, that would be taken. Now what are the basic features of this registration process note? The registration process note, that this registration would be mandatory for the persons who would be crossing the threshold limit. You know that there are in every finance law there are some threshold limit, like for service tax today we are liable to get ourselves registered once our turnover crosses 9 lakhs, and our liability starts once we cross 10 lakhs. For VAT, there are various threshold limits are there as per the various states, like in some of the states are 5 lakhs is the limit, some of the states are 1 lakhs of limit. So this is the way it has been, and there has to be some threshold limit, and that threshold limit, how it is to be worked out, the threshold limit at present for the central law, service tax. I am giving you the examples now how that threshold is being worked out today. At present, if I consider the service tax, for the purpose of service tax all India, it would be single SSC for the purpose of working out the threshold, in spite of the fact that there are separate registration per branch wise, unit wise, etc. Though there are centralized registration procedures are there, even if you don't obtain a centralized registration, if you obtain an individual registration for the individual unit, but for the purpose of working out your threshold limit of 9 lakhs across the country, all turnover is required to be taken into consideration. This is only in case of a service tax. Now come to the central excise. Central excise, every individual unit there would be 1 crore 50 lakhs. Now 1 crore 50 lakhs is the SSI exemption limit. There are certain conditions attached to it. Now come to the VAT. If you have different units in the different states, and every state VAT act there are different threshold limits, so you have a wider coverage as per the present law. Now there were discussions amongst the finance ministers, among the state finance ministers and the import committee, that in the present VAT act, since there are different thresholds under the different state, then why there would be one global threshold limit, and more particularly this registration would be on a state basis, not on a centralized basis. Though GST is the central law, it would be the uniform GST, which is actually the objective of this GST, but there would be state-wise registration. But the state finance minister, which they have stated, there are about say 36 states and union territories. Now if there is a 25 lakhs of rupees threshold limit, in that case if you multiply 25 lakhs into 36 or 37 as the case may be, you will be finding that the figure comes out to be 9 crore. So an SSC would be getting a benefit of 9 crore and the states would be central, not the state would be getting the revenue, but the central would be losing out of that year. So central did not agree, and now ultimately what is the proposal, and which is actually going to take place, clubbing all the turnover across the country, all locations would be the threshold limit, though you are liable to pay tax on a state-wise registration basis. So whenever your state registration, it may so happen you have in a particular state your turnover is 1 lakh rupees. Say for example, in a particular state your turnover is only 1 lakh of rupees, and other states may be 5 crore, 15 crore, 100 crores. But even for that 1 lakh of rupees, you have to have a registration and you have to comply for everything. So even for a small units located in a different place, you require to get yourself registered for under the GST. Presently in the service tax, under reverse charge mechanism, even if you are not a service provider, even if you are not a manufacturer of taxable goods, you are liable to pay service tax under reverse charge, even if your payment is 1 rupee. So you have to comply, and for the purpose of comply you have to have a registration under the reverse charge, and this same reverse charge mechanism would be applicable for under the GST also. Exactly similar fundamental concept of the reverse charge mechanism, which is actually prevalent if you see the any neighboring country GST model, you would be finding that the similar structure which is being followed under our service tax, same fundamental principle would be applicable in this case. Only the difference what you would be finding tomorrow, the difference between today and tomorrow, today only reverse charge mechanism is applicable in case of service. Tomorrow reverse charge mechanism would be applicable for import of goods also. Even for the import of today, when you are importing the goods, are you paying service tax on reverse charge, or are you paying central excise on reverse charge? No, you are only paying the customs duty, and you are paying the CVD, you are paying the SAD. These are basically the taxes which are being levied when you are importing the goods. Tomorrow there will be customs duty and the GST called IGST when you are importing the goods. So mandatory registration, in spite of the fact that you do not manufacture, or if you do not, suppose the threshold limit today is 25 lakhs and your total turnover across the country is say 22 lakhs of rupees. Now you want to import something, and this import, once you are trying to import some service, or there is any reverse charge, like say lawyer service, you want to take a lawyer service, that lawyer service the recipient is liable to pay service tax and the reverse charge. In that case you have to compulsorily obtain a registration and you have to comply all the formalities under the GST. Today, as per the service tax law, if somebody whose turnover is more than 10 lakhs of rupees, he is liable to pay service tax. Suppose somebody whose turnover is 20 lakhs of rupees today at the time of implementation of GST, and the GST's threshold limit is 25 lakhs. So automatically he is out of the GST, automatically. But there is an option, you can continue under the GST in spite of the fact that your threshold is less than the threshold, your turnover is less than the threshold limit, so that all the facilities of credit, availment, etc. would be permissible to you. Now, presently there is no, as per the present any law, whether it is VAT, service tax or central excise, there is no suo motu registration by the authorities. No suo motu registration. If there is any raid takes place or any enforcement takes place, now they ask the assessee to obtain the registration from the appropriate authority. They write a note to the assessee and leave the note to the person and ask them to take a registration. Here there has been a power has been given to the tax authority in case of an enforcement raid. They have the power to generate the registration in your name, and based on that generation of that registration, they can collect the tax from you. This is the they have brought in this process, this concept of suo motu registration by the tax authority. There is a proposal that there would be larger threshold limit in case of a person who is opting for a compounding scheme. For a compounding scheme, there would be higher threshold limit. Now, there is also one proposal that though the threshold limit for the general assessee across the country has been proposed to be fixed at 25 lakhs of rupees, there is a proposal, the figure has not yet been worked out, for the assessees situated into the northeast states. There would be probability of a lesser threshold limit. And it is also proposed that the threshold limit for goods and services would be the similar. Now what will happen if the goods and services are coming under the similar threshold limit? In that case, the central excise assessees who are enjoying today SSI benefit of 1.5 crore, they are now would be coming under the GST crutch, and the person who are paying service tax at a slab of say 15 to 20, between 10 and 25 lakhs, they may be opted out from the GST net. And in case of a interstate dealers, interstate assessee, that means if you are a service provider, please note, suppose so many chartered accountants, I'm not so many, I think everybody is a chartered accountant sitting over here, maybe not everybody is in practice, but those who are in practice, maybe your turnover is below the threshold limit of say 25 lakhs of rupees, so you are not, logically you are not liable to pay service tax. Now the moment you would be raising one invoice crossing the border, even for 500 rupees, if you raise an invoice to an assessee or to your client situated in Bihar, beyond West Bengal, then immediately you will be out of that threshold limit and you are required to immediately discharge the tax liability on the entire amount. So that is a very big important point to be noted, that the moment you have, suppose you have a 20 lakhs of rupees turnover as an individual practice or a small practitioner having it, the moment you raise an invoice, then you are liable to take a registration and comply everything. So for any interstate supply of goods and interstate supply of services, that threshold limit is not taken into consideration. There would be zero threshold limit, so they are required to take a registration at the zero level. There is one proposal also that there would be no input tax credit in respect of the purchases made prior to obtaining the registration. That means today your turnover, suppose when you are crossing the threshold limit of 25 lakhs, it may so happen you may have certain inputs lying in your factory, and more precisely inventories, not inputs. Inventories, it may be finished goods, it may be WIP, it may be inputs. Inventories lying as on the date of implementation of, as on the date of you are covered under the registration. Or even for the date of implementation of the GST, suppose today as an SSE, Central Excise SSE, you are enjoying the SSI benefit. Your turnover is say 1.25 crore. So you have not taken any SENVAT credit, neither you are liable to pay any Central Excise duty on your removal of any goods. Now think of a situation as on 1st of April. Suppose if that GST comes on 1st of April, he becomes liable to obtain registration and discharge tax liability because his turnover, previous year's turnover or previous period's turnover already crossed 25 lakhs of rupees. Now think of a situation at the point of 31st of March, he might have a couple of inventories. That inventory has suffered Central Excise duty where he has not taken any SENVAT credit. Why he has not taken any SENVAT credit? Because he was not paying duty and enjoying the SSI exemption. Now that particular input would be used for manufacture of taxable goods, which would be when he would be selling, he would be paying GST. Now when he is going to take the registration? When he is going to take the registration, he is going to take the registration on 1st of April 2016. And all his inputs and inventories procured prior to 1st of April 2016. So in this case, he would be denied the credit. That is what is the proposal. I already told that there would be state-wise registration. But there is one more provision. There can be multiple registration within the state. There is multiple registration within the state on a business vertical basis. Suppose if you have a 4 business vertical operating in West Bengal, even in Calcutta, say for example, let's not think of you have a unit in Durgapur, you have a unit in Siliguri, you have a unit in Bardhaman, you have a unit in Calcutta. It is not the situation, even a situation I am talking about, that you have a 4 clear-cut business vertical situated in the same single premises. Situated into the same single premises, having a identified business vertical, all income and expenditure are accounted for in your SAP or in your accounting system under individual business vertical. For that individual business vertical, you can have vertical wise registration, and when you obtain a registration under the business vertical wise, then what will happen? You are allowed to take the credit if there is a cross business between the verticals. If there is no cross business between the verticals, it may so happen one vertical is having credit, another vertical is having liability. That cannot be allowed to be set up. But when there is any enforcement or any demand arises for one vertical, all the vertical together, the unit would be considered to be a single business entity for the purpose of getting the money from him. So for the purpose of enforcement of a particular demand, that time all the verticals would be clubbed together, whereas at the time of allowing the credit between the verticals, that will not be allowed. Now, there are cases you can surrender your registration, either you can surrender your registration or the department has the power to cancel the registration. There are two situations where you may opt for a surrender of registration or department on the basis of your performance on a regular basis. The department has the power to cancel your registration. What are the situations? When you can opt for a surrender of registration, when there is a closure of business. If you have closed your business, then you have to file an application. There is a prescribed form in this regard. You have to file an application stating all the reasons, etc., that you have already closed the business. So you will be asking for an application to be filed for surrender of the registration. When your gross turnover has come down to the below the threshold limit, you can file an application for surrender of registration. When you have a transfer of business, suppose if you are suppose somebody, it's a proprietorship concern, the proprietor dies. Once the proprietor dies, then by virtue of that succession, his wife, his son, his daughter may become a proprietor. So the moment that particular proprietor dies, that application for surrender of that particular registration to be given, and the new entrant would be registered, because old registration will not be applicable because it is a PAN based registration. Since it is a PAN based registration, old registration will not be continuing, so that old registration needs to be surrendered and simultaneously new registration to be obtained by the entrant. In case of an amalgamation, when there is an amalgamation, one entity would be merged with another entity, so one entity would be defunct. The defunct entity, he must be having some registration under the GST that needs to be surrendered. You have to submit the High Court, scheme and etc. And based on that High Court scheme, that it has gone merged with X and this is the new company, all business got merged within it, and there is a merged entity named so and so. By virtue of that High Court merger plan, merger scheme, that registration has to be surrendered and accordingly an application to be filed and necessary document has to be filed, and after that your registration would be surrendered. Now, what are the circumstances the department can cancel your registration? The department can cancel your registration when there is no commencement of business. It may so happen you have obtained a registration but you have not started your, because voluntary registration you can take. Like I'll take you through some other cases like non-registered, non-resident registration, non-resident register, casual registration, non-resident registration, how it is coming. So suppose you have taken a registration and after some time you have not continuously filed returns for a particular period, it is being followed. You know that everything should be automated. What are you doing, whether you are doing on time or not, everything is being recorded and it is being monitored strictly. So if there is a consecutive 3 terms or 4 terms or 5 terms, that law has not yet been decided, that it has been suggested that appropriate law to be drafted for this purpose. So if anybody defaults for a particular period of time and do not file the registration, do not file the return on time for a consecutive period, in that case the department has the authority to cancel your registration. In the SINVAT credit rule in the service tax, we have a concept of input service distributor. And that input service, there was a question what would be the fate of the input service distributor model. Now they have agreed to that proposal that yes, there would be the similar line of input service distributor. Now the question comes, in the GST there would not be any distinction between goods and services. Goods and services to be taken into consideration one single item. So why that, how that goods and service type goods, that service, because in the proposal they have stated that it is input service distribution, that only input service distribution to be taken care of service. The word used service, but the word goods have not been considered. Now there is a huge issue I will take you through when the the concerns for each and every item. First let me explain you what is the proposal. Now GSTIN, that GST identification number, it would be state based, it will be state wise, and PAN based 15-digit number. How it has been defined, that first two columns would be the state code, next 10 columns would be permanent account number, third next one is entity code, like whether it is a private limited company or a limited company or a cooperative society, individual, proprietorship firm, partnership firm, etc. This entity code, for each and every entity there has to be one code, and that code is to be there. On the basis of that code you can identify that the assessee is a partnership firm, or an assessee is, like you know that in income tax PAN you can identify from the PAN that whether the assessee is a firm or assessee is a proprietorship concern or a limited company or a trust, as the case may be. And the balance next one would be left blank for subsequent use, and that 50, and the last 15 serial number and the clause number 15 or the box number 15, that would be the check digit. Now what is that now new concept they have brought in, a non-resident dealer? What is this non-resident dealer? Non-resident dealer means, suppose you are having business in 4 states. You have taken registration for 4 states. Now you are contemplating to start a business in another state, which is the 5th one. Now for the 5th state, you can take a registration, and all registration process which is applicable for the casual dealer would be applicable. The only difference is that there would not be any advance tax or security deposit for the dealer who is existing dealer and would be considered to be a non-resident dealer. So there is a difference between non-resident dealer and casual dealer only, that for a casual dealer he has to pay the tax in advance, for which he is entitled to get the credit, and for a non-resident dealer he does not require to pay the duty in advance or any security deposit to be given to him by him. And casual dealer, I told that casual dealer that any unregistered person can obtain the registration, and for that matter he has to make the payment of tax in advance, and he can get the credit of that tax which has been paid at the time of procurement. Now procedure for registration which has been suggested. What is this procedure for registration? Now in case of a new registration, then application to be made within 30 days of becoming liable for registration. When you become a liable for registration, you are liable to make a registration because the moment you cross the threshold limit, that is your liability. Or if you are an interstate dealer, interstate subject dealer, in that case from the first sale you are liable to pay the tax. So this is how that new registration, if you have to obtain a new registration, that application to be made within 30 days. If you are an existing VAT and excise registered dealer, in that case if you have a PAN based registration, then automatically it would be generated, GSTIN would be automatically generated and would be sent to you. If your PAN is not validated, suppose if you still are holding without a PAN based registration, in that case you have, the department will ask for the PAN to be supplied to them, and once you supply the PAN, then PAN based GSTIN would be generated and it would be communicated to you. Now for an existing service tax payer, now it may so happen for the service tax assessee, as you know that the service tax assessee, there is a centralized registration concept, like say banks and very large organizations for the centralized accounting system maintained through SAP, Oracle or ERP. they take a centralized registration and they file the return in a centralized location which is permitted under the law. Now in the GST there cannot be any centralized registration concept, there has to be a state-wise registration. Now you have to inform to the GSTN what are the states where you have to take the registration, and accordingly you have to file the replication, and on the basis of your undertaking that say if you have all 36 states, then 36 registration would be generated. If you have 5 states, then the 5 state registration should be generated, and that registration process is very cumbersome, and each and every information to be given. Each and every information, even who would be the authorized signatory, who would be your authorized representative, his all details, like a chartered accountant, advocate or TRP, who would be your authorized representative, his all details needs to be given. Who would be the authorized signatory? It may so happen a company may have 3, 4, 5 authorized signatories, all details have to be given in the prescribed form. Another important thing which has been brought in is the blacklisting of dealers. Now a dealer would be blacklisted. There has been a system of GST compliance rating. Whether you are a compliant GST dealer or not, that would be tracked. And if you are not a compliant, first once you have failed, there will be a trigger, and that based on that trigger an alert would be coming to you that you have been non-compliant for this. You are requested to comply. If you don't comply for the next 2, 3, if you don't comply, they will be giving you a date, then you will be blacklisted. The moment you will be blacklisted, they will give you SMS, they will give you an email that you have been blacklisted, intimate. After they intimate you, they would be intimating across the country. All dealers would be given an SMS and email, this is the blacklisted dealers. Why? Because if somebody purchases from a blacklisted dealer, no credit would be allowed, so he will alert you that this is the blacklisted dealers, don't do transaction with that blacklisted dealers. If you do that transaction in the blacklisted dealers, then you will not be allowed any credit. However, the credit would be subsequently allowed. Credit would be allowed subsequently once the blacklisted dealer clears it. Now again that process will come, and then that means even if you by mistake you purchased, you missed out that alert. You purchased, it may so happen that you are dependent on a particular supplier. You don't have any supplier. It may so happen you are dependent exclusively on a particular supplier. There are no supplier on the particular goods in your locality, so you have no choice to buy from him to run your business. In that case, you have to buy from him, and you have to see and you have to follow when that alert gets green. Now it is a red alert. Now he has been blacklisted, and once that alert comes as a green, then you are entitled to take the credit, and all necessary process you have to do, because there are nothing manual, everything through system. Now what are the trigger for blacklisting? This is also prescribed. What would be the trigger for blacklisting? Continuous default for 3 months in paying input tax credit that has been reversed. That means where you were liable to reverse the credit for say for presently we are required to reverse the SENVAT credit under rule 6.3 if we do not maintain separate books of accounts and uses the common input or input services for the purpose of manufacture of exempted goods and exempted services, etc., and taxable goods and taxable services. So this similar fundamental concept would be there into the GST, and where you are required to reverse but you have not paid. Once suppose that 3 months that you have not, that means there is a continuous default of making the payment of tax which has been reversed. This is one. Continuous default of 3 months or any 3 months, continuous 3 months, please note, continuous 3 months or any 3 months over a period of 12 months. That means once you continuously 3 months you are a defaulter, then you would be blacklisted. It may so happen this month you are a defaulter, a trigger has come. next 2 months you are okay. Second month again you are blacklisted, but there is a non-compliance. So then over a period of 12 months period, if there is a 3 months default, you would be blacklisted. Defaulter of even a single event would also be flagged and put in public domain as being potential blacklisted dealer, so that the alert to the buyer, which I was telling,